Hello, welcome to the second session in the Structured Literacy series. This session introduces the reciprocal relationship between phonemic awareness and phonics. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge all of the organizations and professionals who contributed to the information and research prepared in this presentation. The International Dyslexia Association, the MiMTSS Technical Assistance Center, the Michigan Dyslexia Handbook, Dr. Anita Archer, Dr. Moats and Dr. Tolman, and Margie Gillis and Nancy Chappell-Eberhardt. Here is a notice about using material provided in TA Center presentations. You are free to share or adapt the resources, but please give the MiMTSS TA Center credit and indicate where any adaptations have been made. This is session 2 of our 5 series on structured literacy. Today we will focus on phonemic awareness and phonics for effective instruction. Today's purpose is to continue the conversation about structured literacy instruction. We will hone in on phonemic awareness and phonics, and absolutely include knowledge for instruction and applying skills for effective teaching. We're going to discuss the difference between all of those PH terms, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics. We're going to discuss the developmental progression of these skills and dive into instructional components. We will discuss deeply about phonemic awareness and phonics, and then we will end on the topic of practice. When we talk about practice, we will chat about how much practice students need with certain skills to achieve proficient reading. We will always start our sessions in this series on a similar topic, recapping the science of reading. The science of reading is a vast body of research that has determined that teaching students to read using structured literacy is the most powerful way to prevent reading failure. That would be reading instruction focused on the structure of our language system. It is appropriate for all students, and it truly is essential for students who are at risk. We will always reference why we're having these professional learning series topics on structured literacy. And it is partly because our state has recently passed Public Act 146, which outlines details for K-12 literacy instruction. In the PA 146, it outlines that districts should have professional learning grounded in the science of reading and principles of structured literacy. So this series aligns with our new legislation. The Michigan Dyslexia Handbook is a resource that was shared in our first session. The Michigan Dyslexia Handbook is designed to help educators, district, and school leaders develop a shared understanding of best practices to prevent reading difficulties. I shared last time that structured literacy is highlighted on page 12 and page 17. And this time we're talking about phonemic awareness and phonics, and I wanted to highlight that today's topic is on page 20, discussing a code emphasis phonics approach. This is a wonderful resource, and I highly recommend you digging into this PDF document with your school teams. In session 1, we also introduced this graphic from IDA, the International Dyslexia Association. Each session of this series will cover instructional areas of our language system. Today's topic involves word recognition and the connection between phonemes and graphemes. You'll see that these blue areas are pointing to where we see this in our IDA graphic. Here we have the simple view of reading. We also reviewed this in session 1. Today's topic of phonics and phonemic awareness fits into that word recognition bucket. The simple view of reading is a framework for educators to understand what's going on in the brain when our students are reading. And we really want to apply our understanding of the simple view of reading to our instructional decisions that we make for our students. It informs what we teach, what we assess, and how we determine where a student is struggling if they are not comprehending. Here we have the progression of reading skills, which we also reviewed in session 1. I really like to ground us in these 3 graphics, the IDA graphic, the simple view of reading, and the progression of reading skills. And I just want to highlight where today's topic fits into these 3 frameworks. The knowledge and skill of phonemes is where phonological awareness skills fit in this puzzle. Children have to become aware of increasingly smaller pieces of sound. When we think about a large piece of sound, it would be a sentence, a phrase, and then moving to smaller multi-syllable words, a single syllable, and then an individual sound being the smallest piece of sound. So here in this graphic, it shows the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Phonological awareness is the broader skill. It includes all levels of the speech sound system. You can see this blue bar of phonological awareness at the top if you follow my cursor. It includes all levels of the speech sound system, and that includes alliteration, rhyme, syllable, onset rhyme, and phonemic awareness. So phonological awareness is all of these skills. Let's talk about alliteration, rhyme, syllable, onset rhyme. Here are some examples. Alliteration would be Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. All of those words start with that same phoneme of p, and it's a repetition of the p sound. When we think about rhyming, we're talking about if 2 words rhyme, cat and hat. They have the same ending sound. Syllable, the word rabbit, has 2 beats, rabbit. Onset rhyme is in the example of the word fish, ish. So syllables are made of 2 parts. We have the onset, which is the sound that comes before the vowel. The rhyme is the vowel plus the consonants that follow. So in the word fish, f is the onset and the rhyme is ish. When we think about these larger units of sound play, alliteration, rhyming, syllable work, onset rhyme, these are used in preschool and early kindergarten to get our students' ears tuned in to hearing language to help them develop phonological sensitivity and learn to listen to language. It's important to note that mastering these larger skills, these phonological awareness skills, syllables, rhyming, it's not necessary to master those skills to get to the phonemic awareness level. So when we talk about phonemic awareness, we're talking about individual speech sounds. In phonemic awareness, the ability to manipulate phonemes is what best supports the alphabetic principle. So let's shift and discuss phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is foundational for acquiring the skill of decoding. If it is underdeveloped, students will not be successful in later phonics skills. Again, manipulating words at the syllable and onset rhyme levels is not a requirement to master before we move to phonemic awareness, which is working at the individual phoneme level. Conscious awareness of individual speech sounds, your consonants and vowels are those individual speech sounds in spoken syllables, and the ability to manipulate these sounds. This is going to include blending and segmenting phonemes and then phoneme manipulation. Basically, the most important takeaway here is that phonological awareness and phonemic awareness are not synonyms. We need to get children working at the individual sound level by the middle of kindergarten. even if they don't master those larger language skills like rhyming. Phonological awareness skills are good and helpful for children in preschool and early kindergarten. And once we get to the middle of kindergarten, we need to shift and start working at the individual sound level, which is phonemic awareness. Phonological awareness activities can be receptive or expressive. So when we think of receptive, we're thinking about listening or identifying. And when we think of expressive, we're thinking about producing or generating. So keep in mind when you're designing activities because we want to capitalize on students being actively engaged and we want to provide a variety of ways for children to respond. So you can do receptive and expressive activities with phonological awareness. None of these activities on the slide are at the individual phoneme level. So that means that these activities pictured here on the slide are not phonemic awareness activities. They are phonological awareness activities, which is great for that preschool level and beginning kindergarten as they're developing phonological sensitivity and the ability to listen to language. So here are some ideas on this slide for some receptive activities and expressive activities. Now let's shift to phonemic awareness. So again, that's at the individual phoneme level. We want students to become aware of individual phonemes. Phoneme segmentation helps children identify and separate phonemes that are bonded to graphemes. Graphemes are those letter-letter combinations. Segmenting is a warm-up for spelling. So in this example, students segment individual phonemes. Kids can tap sounds with their fingers or with chips. So I might say to a group of students, "What sound? Say the word after me." We'll use a block for each sound. The word is cab. What's the first sound? That's identifying that first individual phoneme. I might ask what the middle sound is. That's identifying the individual middle sound. I could also do that for the last sound. We could ask the children to say all the sounds in cab. K, a, b. That is segmenting the sounds in a word. This is a nice visual on how to segment sounds and slide the token into the box for each sound. For every sound you hear, the student slides a token into the empty box. This will help strengthen skills in the area of phonology as well as linking to orthography when we are able to introduce letters. It's important to note that once we are teaching sound awareness and we're teaching the knowledge of the most common letter representation, we need to be linking in explicit instruction of that sound symbol connection. Teachers are likely very familiar with this type of activity when teaching phonemic awareness and decoding. But note that it also bridges to spelling as well. We can model how to segment words and slide the token into a box for each segment before asking the students to practice. We want to ensure a solid teacher model and scaffolding for our students. Now let's shift to blending, which is also a phonemic awareness activity. Blending is a warm-up for decoding. We're giving individual sounds and the student is blending them together to say the entire word. This is an example on the slide of an activity. I have a puppet here and he can only say one sound at a time. Ready? Listen. Fish. What word was that puppet saying? That's right. He was saying fish. And then you could reveal a picture of your target word. Please note that when I was blending that word, fish, I used connected phonation or continuous blending, which promotes decoding more quickly. Here on this slide is an example of phonemic awareness tasks within a curriculum. These are oral teacher-directed activities with blending and segmenting. So I have highlighted in yellow the directions that the teacher would say aloud. So for blending, the teacher says, let's blend sounds into words. I will say a word slowly and then you will say the word. Listen. Say mob slowly. Mob. What word, everyone? Mob. You can see how we did connected phonation continuous blending there. On the right of the slide, you have an example of a segmenting activity. Please see the text highlighted in yellow. You're going to segment words having 3 sounds. I will say a word, then you will touch your fingers and say the sounds. The first word is snow. What word, everyone? Snow. Put 3 fingers up and touch your fingers and say each sound in snow. S-n-o. Great job. The word snow has 3 sounds. So that is a segmenting example. I thought it was helpful to see how these phonemic awareness activities are embedded within curriculum. Here is some general guidance with regards to phonemic awareness. We want phonemic awareness instruction at the individual phoneme level happening by the middle of kindergarten, regardless of mastery of those larger language skills like rhyming. It's very important to begin individual phoneme instruction by the middle of kindergarten. Phonemic awareness is that ability to isolate, segment, and blend and manipulate phonemes. Phonemic awareness facilitates a child's ability to link speech sounds to printed letters and letter combinations. It is the basis for word reading and spelling. We want our students to be able to identify phonemes and words, pull them apart, put them together. This is what enables kids to read and spell. We want students to receive explicit instruction in phonemic awareness daily in small doses. Letters do reinforce and support phonemic awareness once students have learned to auditorily attend to sound. Sound awareness and knowledge of that most common letter representation is a ready way to start explicit instruction of that sound symbol connection. When students learn to recognize and realize that letters represent sounds, we really want to start teaching connecting letters and sounds. Phonological awareness skills does lay the foundation for later literacy development. We do not need to master all levels before being introduced to that alphabetic principle. We want to be introducing that sound symbol connection as soon as learners are ready. Segmenting and blending are critical skills to introduce to produce skilled reading. Segmenting is required for spelling and blending is required for reading. The next section is phonics, a code emphasis approach to teaching reading. Phonics has 2 pieces, phonemes and graphemes. The teaching of links between phonemes and graphemes. So let's start with phonemes, the sounds of spoken English. We have graphemes, the letter or letter combinations of written English. Graphemes represent the phonemes of spoken English, linking the letters on the page to the sounds they represent. Learning to read involves attending to each letter. We do not learn to read by learning words as whole units. Understanding the relationship between phonemes and graphemes and letters is very important for educators. Here on this slide, we have the word sheep. The sounds in sheep are sh, e, p. 3 sounds, 3 phonemes. The graphemes are the letter combinations that represent those sounds. SH is the grapheme that represents sh. And then we have 5 letters in the word sheep. It's important that teachers understand these concepts. Often, we do have the same number of phonemes and graphemes, but not always. Take the word fox, for example. X is one grapheme, but it's two phonemes. X. Graphemes and phonemes are critical to learning to read words, and understanding the difference is critical for educators who are teaching reading. Here's an example of part of a phonics lesson. All of these activities on the slides are examples of phonics tasks. We have letter sound associations, reading words at the word level, and reading at the sentence level, which is connected text. Here we have independent practice at the sentence level and more independent practice at the sentence level. Between these two slides, all of these phonics activities, you'll see a variety of activities: sound drill, decoding at the word, sentence, and connected text levels. This provides many opportunities for students to practice the skills that they've learned. All the skills that are practiced in these lessons are related to the new concept that the students were taught. For example, you don't see an advanced phonics skills such as vowel teams in these lessons. This lesson happened to be about short O. So the content in these lessons are isolated to their current skill level and then what they have learned previously. So that is an important point. We don't see random skills that are not aligned to what has been previously learned or what they're being currently taught. The last topic in this section we'll touch on just briefly, which is words that are phonetically irregular, meaning you cannot sound them out. A few terms to straighten out. We're going to talk about high frequency words and sight words. High frequency words are words that occur commonly in text. These words can be regular or irregular in their sound spelling patterns. Sight words are words that readers can read accurately and automatically if by sight. These words have been orthographically mapped and stored. We want all words to become sight words. It is really important to understand the difference between phonetically irregular words, high frequency words, sight words, because many programs use many different words to label this type of category of words. Today, we're going to talk about phonetically irregular words. So this is going to be a word that a child cannot sound out based off what they've learned. Let's take a look at the example said. We need to remember that all new words are taught with direct reference to their sound spelling correspondence. Decoding is how we learn to read. So with the word said, we're first going to discuss the sounds of that word. S, e, d. We're going to point out that that middle sound, is pronounced with that short e sound, but it's represented by the letters AI. It isn't following what we know about letter sound relationships. We're going to say the sounds, name the letters, and read the entire word. S, e, d, said. S-A-I-D. Said. We will go through more irregular spelling routines in session 3 of this series, which focuses on handwriting and spelling. But it didn't feel right not to include this in our phonics section as well. The last section for today is on the topic of practice. Neural pathways take time and practice to build. We need to build in time for our students to practice the new skills that they're learning so that they can master them. I want you to take a moment and consider something that you are good at. What did you have to do to get good at this skill before it was very solidly learned until you could do it without thinking? Riding a bike, skiing, cooking. What did you have to do at that skill before you could do it automatically? You had to practice, right? Within our lessons, we really need to give our students many opportunities to practice the skill that we are hoping that they master. Automaticity is being automatic with a skill. We want our students to have automatic decoding skills so they can read fluently. In order to get to automaticity, we have to have our students practicing these skills. If a child is so focused on sounding out words, that's okay, that's where they're at. They need to practice those skills. When we are so focused on a lower level skill, like decoding, we have less cognitive energy to focus on those higher level skills of comprehension. When we're working very hard and using a lot of cognitive energy on decoding, it might cause reduced fluency. That's okay. We have to provide instruction to provide mastery on those basic skills. Once we're automatic with those basic skills, we will become more fluent and we'll be able to free up cognitive space to focus on more higher level skills, such as comprehension. It's not really enough just to provide students with time to practice, but what our students are practicing matters. I'm going to show two examples of different types of text, and I'm going to show how it's important to match the type of practice to the content that was taught in our instruction. So here on this slide, we have a decodable text selection. It is called Jen's Web, is the title of the story. On the right side of the slide, you'll see that in order to read this text, students are going to need to know their short vowels and all of their consonant sounds. So this is likely an end of kindergarten text that we would expect our students to be able to decode. Based off of teaching and mastery of the sounds in the box, our students should be able to read this text. The text that they are reading directly matches the content that they've already been taught. Here we have an authentic text selection. So this is designed for that same grade level audience. But you'll notice, in order to read this text, take a look in the box at all of the requirements that our students would have to have. There is a much wider and varied code demand. So this text would be considerably difficult to decode if all of these elements in the box haven't been taught. So likely by the end of kindergarten, we haven't taught all of these elements in decoding. So this is not a good text for our students to be practicing based off what they've learned. So this isn't bad text. It just isn't text that beginning readers are prepared to read based off what they've been taught so far. This would be excellent listening level text to build knowledge or vocabulary. It's important to note that decodable text increases the amount of opportunity to practice the code. While we're mentioning decodable text, let's discuss how decodable text fits into this topic of achieving automaticity. Here we have out of context practice and in context practice. So out of context practice with decodable words is absolutely important. It bridges that individual letter sounds to the word level. When we move that skill into in-context practice, this is where students are getting practice with fluency and they're applying their decoding skills in connected text. And this is where we are really going to see acceleration in their learning. So both types of practice are important and they have a different purpose. It's very important to keep in the forefront how we plan instruction guides that effective practice. Systematic phonics is really built on this explicit instruction principle. We are teaching from the most frequent concepts, the most frequent sounds, the most frequent syllable types to less frequent. So we're getting the most for our instructional buck, right? You want the most bang for your buck. So that would be following a scope and sequence, simple to complex. And that affords that cumulative teaching, what they've learned prior and what they're learning currently, and connecting their practice to what they have been taught and what they're currently learning. We don't want to give them material to practice that hasn't been taught yet. Using a systematic scope and sequence will really help appropriate practice. Today, we've covered a variety of topics. We've discussed that phonemic awareness is at the individual phoneme level. We talked about the differences between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. We talked about segmenting is required for spelling, while blending is required for reading. We discussed phonics and the links between phonemes and graphemes, and we ended on practice and how systematic instruction can lead to automaticity. Our next session will focus on writing skills, and it's going to include discussion of handwriting and spelling. Please see our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, join our listserv, or follow us on Instagram to stay connected to the MiMTSS TA Center.